They get it all, he said. They get it by advertisement, not by work. They take it away from us who loaf our boots. It goes to this presently I have no work. Every year it gets less. Now he says, now Mr. Gessler is saying, when he was speaking for long and in a bitter voice or bitter tone, you can say, or bitter words even, what he said was, they get it all. They get it by advertisement, not by work. They take it away from us who love our boots. It comes to this, presently I have no work. Every year it gets less. Now Mr. Gessler, he is telling his hardship about his business, that these big firms, they are so pro in marketing. They give such big advertisements, fancy advertisements in the market, that people are, they give you lucrative deals, or they are so lucrative that the people are attracted towards them, the bigger firms, and not to the smaller business shops. So Mr. Gessler is telling that presently I do not have any work, and every year the work is getting less because of the bigger firms. You will see. And looking at his lined face, I saw things I had never noticed before. Bitter things and bitter struggle, and what a lot of grey hairs there seemed suddenly in his red beard. Now the author is saying, while he was telling his hardships, he was so bitter inside that I could see things which I had never ever noticed on his face. He said, the author says, that I could see the grey hair in his red beard. Remember in the earlier paragraphs, author had mentioned that he had the red beard. So now he is telling, I could see the grey hair in his red beard. His lined face, probably Mr. Gessler had wrinkles all over his face because of the hardship he has faced. Bitter things and bitter struggle, and what a lot of grey hair they seemed suddenly in his red beard. Bitter struggle and bitter life. As best I could, I explained the circumstances of those ill-omened boots. So now the author says, as best as I could, as into my best strength, my best convincing power, I explained the circumstances of those ill-omened boots. The author says that I tried to convince him, to tell him the situation when he had bought those ill-omened boots. Ill-omened means unlucky or inauspicious boots. But his face and voice made so deep an impression that during the next few minutes I ordered many pairs. Even after listening to the author, when he said that, when he tried to explain the circumstances, the situation when he had bought those unlucky and not really good, bad kind of boots, still Mr. Gessler made that kind of a face, which was, and and the voice he used, it made such a deep impression on the author that in next few minutes he ordered many pair of boots. They lasted longer than ever. Mr. Gessler, we all know, made such good boots that they lasted really long. So the boots that the author ordered, many pair of boots that he ordered, they lasted for a very long period. And I was not able to go to him for nearly 2 years. And the author says that because of the condition of the boots that he had given, they were so good and they lasted for such a long time that he did not get the chance to visit him for almost 2 years. It was many months before my next visit to his shop. So it was many months before my next visit to his shop. This time it appeared to be his elder brother handling a piece of leather. So when the author next time went to Mr. Gessler's shop after almost 2 years of difference, it felt as if he met his elder brother. He thought that he is meeting his elder brother who was carrying a piece of leather in his hand. "Well, Mr. Gessler," I said, "how are you?" He came close and peered at me. Author asked, "Well, Mr. Gessler, how are you?" He came near, peered at me as in looking from a very short distance, looking very, from a very closely. So he came close, he peered at me, and then he says, "I am pretty well," he said slowly, "but my elder brother is dead." So now he is telling, "I am pretty well, I am fine, I am good, but my elder brother has passed away, he's died." And I saw that it was indeed himself, but how aged and worn. Now, the author is telling, then I realized that I was not meeting his elder brother. It was actually Mr. Gessler himself. And he looked so old and tired. He looked very thin, as if he's very worked out. And never before had I heard him mention his brother. Much shocked, I murmured, "Oh, I'm sorry." And the author says, I had never heard him talking about his brother. And then I murmured in a very soft tone, I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." That's what we say, right? When somebody dies, we say, right? I'm sorry, right? So probably the death of his elder brother would have impacted Mr. Gessler deeply enough that he mentioned about him to the author. "Yes," he answered, "he was a good man. He made a good boot." And then when the author had said, "I'm sorry," Mr. Gessler said, "Yes, he was a good man." He's talking about the elder brother, that he was a good man. He made good boots. He was a good artist, that he made good boots. But he is dead. But now he is passed away. And he touched the top of his head, where the hair had suddenly gone as thin as it had been on that of his poor brother, to indicate, I suppose, the cause of his death. So now Mr. Gessler, while telling him that he was a good man, he made good boots, but now he's gone, he's passed away. And then at the same time, Mr. Gessler, he put his hand on his head, and author could see that the hair were very thin there. Probably Mr. Gessler was trying to tell how his brother died. Probably he was trying to tell the cause of his death. And then he immediately asked, "Do you want any boots?" And then Mr. Gessler asked the author, "Do you want any boots?" And he held up the leather in his hand. "It's a beautiful piece." And then again in German accent, he said, he picked up leather in his hand, a piece of leather in his hand, and he said, "It is a beautiful piece." I ordered several pairs. Author again ordered multiple pairs. It was very long before they came, but they were better than ever. When the author had ordered multiple pair of boots, it really took very long to come to deliver to his house, to come to him. But then he says, at least they came, better than never. So at least they came. I was not expecting. One simply could not wear them out. And soon after that I went abroad. And when they came, he says, I could not wear them all at a time. And soon after I went abroad. There were many pairs, so of course he had to, he can't wear them every day, all of them. So he had to, he just, left it there, and then after some time he went abroad. Abroad as in some foreign country. I was over a year before I was again in London. So he was out of the country, out of London for almost over an year, and after that he returned to London. At the first shop I went to was my old friend's. I had left a man of 60. I came back to one of 75, pinched and worn, who genuinely this time did not at first know me. So now the author is saying that it was almost an year, maybe a little more than an year, that I was out of the country, and then I returned back to London. And the first shop I visited was my friend's. Who was the friend? Mr. Gessler. Now, the author is explaining in this 1 year, the span of 1 year, how the looks of Mr. Gessler changed. The author explains, I had left a man of 60 years, but when I returned in almost a year, I saw a man of 75. He had, in just 1 year, it looked like as if he's aged 15 years. He's grown old almost for 15 years. He was pinched and worn. He had become very thin and very old, who genuinely this time did not first know me. Even he had become very thin, he had become very old, he looked very old, and at the first moment, first instance, he did not actually even recognize the author. Do you want any boots? He said. I can make them quickly. It is a slack dime. Then Mr. Gessler, he asked the author, do you want any boots? I can make them quickly. It is a slack time. It is a slack time, as in the business is not really going very good. It is, uh, a low time, you can say. So he asks him, do you want any boot? I can really make them very fast. I answered, please, please, I want boots all around, every kind. So then the author, he was so shocked to see him in that condition. And when he asked, Mr. Gessler asked, do you want any boots? The author could not stop himself and said, please, please, I want all kind of boots in the shop. I had given those boots up when one evening they came. One by one I tried them on. So the author says, one evening finally I got all my boots. But I had actually, given up means thought they would never come, because it took a long time. So the author thought that probably they will never come. But then one evening they came to my place. They reached the author's house. One by one I tried them on. So he tried every pair one by one. In shape and fit, in finish and quality of leather, they were the best he had ever made. The shape of the boots, the quality of leather which was put in the boots was the best Mr. Gessler had ever made. He had made the best quality ever and delivered to the author. I flew downstairs, wrote a check and posted it at once with my own hand. So the author, he was so touched, he was so happy that he immediately went downstairs, probably in his house, and wrote a check to Mr. Gessler and posted it immediately with his own hand, as in he went himself to post the check. A week later, passing the little street, I thought I would go in and tell him how splendidly the new boots fitted. And then a week later, almost a week later, the author was passing that street, that narrow small street, and then he thought that probably I should go inside and tell Mr. Gessler and thank him maybe, and tell him how splendidly, as in how great the boots were. But when I came to where his shop had been, his name was gone. But by the time the author reached that place where the shop was there, the name of Gessler brother was not there anymore. It was gone. The board was gone. I went in very much disturbed. The author entered the shop in a disturbed state of mind. In the shop, there was a young man with an English face. So then when the author entered the shop, there was a young man who was sitting there. He was probably a British. "Mr. Gessler in?" I said. So the author asked, "Is Mr. Gessler inside?" "No, sir," he said. "No, but we can attend to anything with pleasure. We have taken the shop over." So that person who was sitting inside the shop, he replied, "No, sir, he is not there, but we can, assist you with anything and everything you would like us to do." And then he tells the author that we have taken the shop over, as in now we have taken over this shop, this place is ours now. "Yes, yes," I said, "but Mr. Gessler?" The author was curious to know about Mr. Gessler. "Oh," he answered, "dead." And then the person who was sitting inside the shop, he told the author that Mr. Gessler was dead. He had passed away. "Dead? But I only received these boots from him last Wednesday week." The author was surprised. He was taken aback. He couldn't believe. He said, "Dead?" Then he thought, how is it possible? Because he just got the pair of boots from him just last Wednesday. I mean the last week. "Ah," he said, "poor old man starved himself. Slow starvation, the doctor called it. You see, he went to work in such a way." Now that person, he is telling the author that poor old man, he starved himself, as in because he did not have any money, he just kept on taking orders and making the boots. He did not have any money, so he was just starving himself gradually. Eventually he starved himself and died. You see, he went to work in such a way. He was only engaged in his boot making art. Would keep the shop on, wouldn't have a soul touch his boots except himself. There were no customers at all. He was out of business. There was nobody who touched his boots, as in there was no customer, there was no person who had ordered boots from him. So he did not have any money to buy food, so he starved himself. When he got an order, it took him such a time. And then when you had given the order, he was telling the author, the person who was sitting inside the shop, he was telling the author, and then when he got the order, as in your order, it took him such a time. He finished his work. People won't wait. As in the kind of time he took to make your pair of boots, if he would take such a long time for other people, people won't wait. They won't wait for such a long time for him to make the boot. And also he was very old by then. He lost everybody, and gradually, eventually, Mr. Gessler, he lost all his customers, because he would take such a long time to make the boots, and people won't wait for that time. And there he would sit, going on, and he would just go on, making boots without any money, because customers wouldn't wait. I will say that for him. Not a man in London made a better boot. And then that Englishman, he said, but one thing I would like to say about Mr. Gessler, there was no better artist than him. He was that kind of man who made the best boot in London. There was nobody in comparison to him. Nobody could make better boots than him. But look at the competition. He never advertised. Would have the best leather too, and do it all himself. Well, there it is. What could you expect with his ideas? So this fellow, he explains that look at the competition out there in the market. He never advertised. Advertised mean to give your information about your work or whatever you are doing publicly, through digital media or through print media like newspapers, magazines, or through social media or through television, radios, to give your information in the public, to let people know what you are doing. That's advertisement. So Mr. Gessler, he never advertised about his work, because of which he was losing on the customers. The competition grew so much. There were more boot companies in the market in his vicinity, who were advertising, and the customers were getting attracted to the other people. And Mr. Gessler was not getting any customers. Would have the best leather too and do it all himself. Though Mr. Gessler was using the best leather than anyone else was using, he was doing everything by himself. So the quality was actually assured, because everything was done by himself. He was not giving the work to some other person. But still, because he was not advertising, he had his own ideas of attracting the customers, which was actually not working, because of which he was losing on the customers. So the last line, which says, what could you expect with his ideas, which means he was not moving along with the time. The time demanded advertisements and he never did that, because he had some other ideas of attracting the customers, and those ideas were not working. So what could you expect with those ideas? But starvation? The author is shocked. He is not able to digest it. He is not able to take it. How can Mr. Gessler die of starvation? So this fellow, he says, that may be a bit flowery, as the saying is, but I know myself he was sitting over his boots day and night, to the very last you see. I used to watch him. So this fellow, he explains to the author, this starvation thing, it might sound a bit flowery. Bit flowery means complicated or very elaborate. Elaborate means too much to understand, too complicated, you can say. So he says that it looks complicated, it is complicated, you might kind of not understand the feeling, the situation, but I know myself. He was sitting over his boots day and night. Sitting over his boots is not literally sitting over his boots. It means that he was continuously working on his boots. He was continuously making his boots. Even to the last you see, he says, the last pair of boot you are seeing, he was continuously working on that. I used to watch him. The fellow is saying that I used to watch him every time, all the day. He was just continuously working on his boots, day and night. Never gave himself time to eat, never had a penny in the house. He says that he was such an old fellow, but he still did not give himself any time to eat. He just did not eat. Never had a penny in the house. He never had any money in the house. He was actually, penniless. All went in rent and leather. Whatever money he could gather, he gave it in the rent, or he would buy leather instead of buying food for himself. How he lived so long, I don't know. This man, he is kind of surprised also, because he says this Mr. Gessler was such an old man. He was an old fellow, aged fellow. How he survived without food for such a long time, I really am surprised. I really do not know how he had survived for such a long time. He regularly let his fire go out. He was a character, but he made good boots. He regularly let his fire go out means he was the kind of, you must have seen fireplaces. So the fireplaces need coal. So because he did not have any kind of money, the fireplace could not, because there was no coal, the fireplace could not burn. He was working even in the great winters. Because of no money, he would let the fireplace go out of the fire. So the man is saying that because he was a fellow that who would not invest in coal, invest in food. Instead he would buy leather. He would work in the difficult conditions also, but not work on the basic things like the food and shelter as in to get a little warmth. He was a character. He was one of its kind. That kind of a man he had never seen. But he made good boots. But whatever it was, he made good boots. Boots which never nobody made. Yes, I said he made good boots. And then the author agrees to the Englishman and he said, yes, he made good boots. The story was written by John Galsworthy. I hope you've understood the story. The story is about quality. The name of the story is Quality. It is about Mr. Gessler who did not change with the changing times and finally ended up engrossed in his love for his art, which was boot making.